Now then, guys. Before we get into the podcast, I got to admit something. Basically, obviously, we're taking this on the roads. You get a couple of complications every now and again. Um, and my laptop overheated sort of in the last 20 minutes. So I only managed to get the actual recording from my camera and not through the microphones. A bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. It's still pretty coherent. Obviously, sound drops off a little bit, so this episode, I'm in my hometown. I'm in an area I grew up in, on literally in Linthorpe Village, where I spent most of my days. And I was lucky enough to go to Middlesbrough Fight Academy, which is just above Linthorpe Shops. It's been there for literally like 30 years, something like that. And yeah, I got to chat to not only one, but two MMA world title holders. I wanted to start these guys as I know MMA doesn't really get the recognition it deserves and kind of gets a little bit of disservice, especially in the Northeast. So yeah, just thought kind of get these two guys on, sort of speak about where they came from, how they got started in it, and kind of how two brothers simultaneously hold Cage Warriors World Championships at the same time, which from Middlesbrough is pretty mad and pretty special. So yeah, I'm absolutely buzzing. The two of the most like genuine, like funny, humble, and like hardworking guys, like, and especially in this sport, man. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Cheers, guys. So yeah, I'm at MFA, Middlesbrough Fight Academy. I've got George and Harry Hardwick in. I didn't actually expect to have you in today, so I'm actually buzzing about it. So yeah, I don't know if you know like the premise of the podcast at all, like or what I'm trying to do with it. But originally it was just kind of like to sort of talk about like funny stories and then like with customers, consumers, fans, like that sort of thing. So obviously I thought I'd get used to one because you're both like not just fighters, but like you're both part of like the entertainment game as well. So I just thought it'd be like funny to get you on, kind of see how he's got started, like how he's got into it, kind of what the goals and dreams are, and then yeah, we'll just get into it.
Yeah.
Sweet. Class. Well, I guess the first thing I want to know with you is like, obviously you're a little bit older, but how did you both get into doing MMA?
So, well, there was the demo of UFC Undisputed 2009, and the two playable characters were Shogun Hua and Chuck Liddell.
Yeah.
And we're playing this demo loads, getting interested in it. We find this TV show called Human Weapon. I think it's like Bill Duff and Jason Chambers going around the world studying martial arts, and it looked like the coolest thing ever. So we're googling, oh, where does boxing near me? And the closest place was actually a Muay Thai gym, which was the style that it said Mauricio Shogun Hua had on UFC Undisputed 2009's demo. I'm like, we've got to go there. It's Muay Thai.
So you
We
just
don't know
both
what
started
it
at the
is.
same time? You both literally just playing that game and then you were just like, we've got to do this, or
Yeah, pretty much. We just both rocked up the same. I also went to like kickboxing with my mate from school for a little bit.
Shiny pants kick.
Yeah, like where there was no low kicks or anything, and I ended up enjoying Muay Thai a lot more and stuff with Muay Thai. And I guess there's also the fact that like the first video game we ever actually played, like back when we were really young, was Tekken. So that was our first ever exposure to
that's
martial
funny
arts.
that because I've got questions about Tekken on here, but yeah.
So that was our first exposure to martial arts, and as unrealistic as that is, in some ways, there's other bits that are pretty cool. And like, again, it kind of clicked at some point while I was starting Muay Thai. Like, oh, Bruce Irvin does this, and then I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing the same stuff as Bruce Irvin. I'm like recognizing like the knees that he was doing. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
That's pretty mad. That I didn't know whether you had like like started off like doing like karate, judo, like stuff like that. Because when I was a kid, I got like pretty much like from about 4, it was like right, you're gonna go do like some sort of like discipline. Do you know what I mean? Because there was just like there was judo schools, karate schools. Like when I was like young in like little rec rooms. Do you know what I mean? Or like in a community space in like the back of a like church or whatever, and you go and do like learn some like high kicks and stuff. And it was basically just like a place for like my dad to be like, oh, go there for a few hours, get on my hair. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't know. I can't believe he's got into it because you both just stopped playing the UFC game. Do you know what I mean? I forgot. Like, I'm quite a bit older than you guys. Do you know what I mean? In some sense, anyway. Um, but as if it was just like playing that demo, that was like, holy shit! Like, what's this?
Yeah, and
Human Weapon, I think that was
that show was
classic
sick.
TV show.
Was that the one where I don't know whether that was the one where they used to do like the breakdowns of like how they used like so it was like the scientific breakdown of the
cartoon,
movements.
like-
So like they'd like
Yeah,
say
yeah.
throw an elbow and they'd see it land, and then you'd see like the 3D sort of like motion going
Yeah, there'd
through.
be some punch or knee to the stomach or some kick to the head. But everything, the force of every strike was compared in relation to how high they've dropped a bowling ball off. It's like
Yeah,
this
like no
punch to the stomach.
PSI to what's it called?
This
Doesn't
punch
make
to the
sense.
stomach is related is relative to the amount of force that would impact if you dropped a bowling ball from 15 feet.
Did you ever
Everything
watch
was
the one where it was like they used to put like samurais from like back in the day against like Genghis Khan or like the Huns or whatever? They used to be. Did you ever see that program?
I remember it. I don't know what it was called, but I
I
do
can't remember what
remember.
it's called, but there was like
Yeah.
an emulation for it, and then they used to get their weapons, and I'm pretty sure Chuck Liddell like used to do it for a little bit. So he used to like sort of sling the weapons into like a ballistics dummy and stuff like that to
Yeah,
see
like-
how hard he could like cut through
the
something.
gel dummies with all the
Yeah,
organs
yeah.
in them.
Yeah, if you've ever watched like Forged in Fire, like those ones where they're like stabbing through them and they
Yeah.
pull it out and there's just like blood pouring out everywhere. So, how old were you then?
Well, when we started proper, I was 12.
I just turned 15.
So you're both pretty young into getting into it.
Yeah. I mean, 15's
That's
like considering I didn't do any other sports at all growing up, really.
yeah. To be fair, like I
That's-
did like a bit of boxing and stuff like that when I was a kid.
But like I was a somewhat active kid, but I never did any sports really, and then I just got into Muay Thai and was shit for ages. Eventually, I think through just training very consistently, stopped being as shit.
Well, it's funny because I've got what era did you start watching UFC? And then obviously you've just said there it was like was that UFC 1 or UFC 2 2009? It was UFC 1, wasn't it, the first game?
The first game, yeah, it was like UFC Undisputed. It was a THQ era.
Yeah,
where everything-
yeah.
Everything was new metal.
Yeah.
And
The first UFC event we watched was UFC 104. So the main event of that was Mauricio Shogun versus Lyoto Machida, the one that went 5 rounds and Shogun was robbed.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like the first fight from that we saw was Anthony Johnson versus
Rumble versus who was it?
Yoshida, I think it was called, where Anthony Johnson just smokes him in like 30 seconds. Cain Velasquez.
Was that when he was at welterweight then as well?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
missed weight. Did he miss weight for that?
Yeah,
one?
5 pounds. But then Cain Velasquez was on that card, and he was a really inspirational one when you're starting out. I remember when I'd get home from school, there was this one Cain Velasquez highlight, and it had "Go to Sleep,"
Which one was
which
it?
is like Eminem and DMX and stuff, and it had that song on. And I watched that exact same highlight reel. It was part of my routine for like 6 months. I'd get in, okay, I'm watching this Cain Velasquez highlight reel.
Just trying to learn off him, just like what was the last fight? Was it the one with Travis Brown that he had? I remember.
That might have been the last one he won.
Yeah, that was
His
the last
last
one he
fight
won,
was in
wasn't it? I
Ghana.
can't remember.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say I remember watching the last one he won. That was pretty impressive. But
The Ngannou fight was one where he did the old Peter Griffin to his knee.
so you got into it like pretty early though, didn't you? Like watching it. To be fair, like getting 100, you know what I mean? It's still like hasn't really came about massively. Do you know what I mean? It was like coming up at the time, like coming through at that time, wasn't it? Because that was kind of like the GSP era, like that sort of stuff, wasn't it? Like them coming through.
Yeah.
Fair. So when did you both have your first amateur fight? Like how long was you training for before you?
So, well, we first fought in Muay Thai. So I fought like a junior rules. Harry fought C class. I was 13. Been training maybe like 8 months, maybe something like that.
I think because you had your first fight before I had mine, just because of the way things were working out. I think I'd been training a year and a bit, maybe. I was like 16. And then had 3 Thai boxing fights within relatively quick succession. And then when Stephen Long, our Muay Thai coach, moved from the Muay Thai gym to MFA, came here to start training MMA, and then I had my first amateur MMA fight within 6 months of doing MMA.
Oh, so you'd only really been doing it like 2 years in total of like having any sort of training, and then suddenly it was just like boom, straight into that.
Well, you took your first amateur fight like 24 hours notice, something like that.
Yeah, like so there was meant to be an interclub, or there was an interclub, and then after the interclub there was a fight show in Newcastle being run by Peter Irving, who's now one of our coaches, and it was against one of his students at the time.
I think we've mentioned this. Is this the one we were talking about before, where I potentially was at your first amateur fight, and then I've just been to your like title-winning fight as well?
Yes,
yeah.
You may very well have been at that, because I can't really think of any other fight shows that have been in a warehouse in Newcastle / Gateshead around that time. So you might very.
It sounds very, very like familiar to me, to be fair. So
I was the first fight on that card. Yeah, like George had done the Interclub earlier in the day.
Yeah, so they'd already booked the venue. They let some people have a Interclub, which is like it's supposed to be a bit of a heavier sport. Really, it is just a fight. You know.
Yeah.
I knew someone else did the same Interclub in the morning, and they got dropped. So really, it was just a fight. It was like 2 4-minute rounds. I remember that was the first time like an MMA competitive kind of environment. I was going for a lot of takedowns wrestling. I was getting these takedowns about 3 minutes in. And at the time, I was thinking when I got one of these takedowns, because I'd never felt fatigued like that. I was like, Chael Sonnen has about 40 fights. Has he got tired?
People
Does he get
constantly
this tired every single time? I remember it was one of the most vivid memories, thoughts I have, is having that thought whilst in an empty warehouse in Newcastle, pretty much having a scrap.
Well, that kind of goes into like obviously before he's going to like pro and stuff like that. But like obviously with you saying there, like you were like Jesus, like as if he does this like constantly. Do you know what I mean? Like this is his thing. Like, did you like from that moment you were like, oh, class, yeah, I just need to get better. I need to get better, or were you like, no, like this is pretty hard?
Oh, it's still fun.
Yeah,
as tiring as it is. I was just cornering some lads at a local interclub on the weekend just gone. And a lot of them had the same experience. That's their first time. Because sparring in the gym, it's not the same fatigue as when you're somewhere else.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a full-blown fight, but when you're somewhere else, you're really going for those takedowns.
Yeah, you're putting that little bit extra in, like trying to go for it sort of thing. Especially if you're trying to like sort of show what you're trying to do as well.
There's
like,
the extra stress and nerves. It's like there was so many people had their first intercom. Like, how? I didn't realize you get that tired.
I can imagine like the like adrenaline like dump and like the nerves as well after a while. Like you've got like say a couple of takedowns or whatever, and then suddenly like the adrenaline drops, and then you've realised like after you've like put that much effort in, then suddenly you're like, actually, yeah, like I've like gassed out a bit here. Do you know what I mean? Or like you said, you put too much in because of anxiety, or like you know like.
And I think another thing that just you forget to breathe, as daft as it sounds. Like I remember my first MMA fight, because knees to the head were legal in amateur back then. And I like landed a bunch
back in the good old days.
Back in the good old days. Like I managed to land like a bunch of knees. But then I remember it dawning on me at the time that like I've not been breathing. Do you know, I was just in the clinch going
throwing.
Afterwards there's just that moment where it catches up with you and you're like, oh fuck, this is horrible.
I do that on a week-to-week basis, still thinking that I can like shadow like box in the house and stuff, and then realise I've gone like 2 minutes without taking a breath, and I'm like, oh, no wonder I'm absolutely knackered. Obviously you guys do this for like 25 minutes straight, you know what I mean? Well, not straight, but try to anyway at least.
Yeah, I mean, neither of us have been 25 minutes yet.
No, he's having, to be fair.
I've been in the fourth, like a minute into the fourth. That's the deepest I've been.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think I've watched both. I think I've watched your last 4 fights and your last 3. I was going to say, and they haven't gone like past it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I've been scheduled for 5 rounds twice, like once much earlier on in my career, and then obviously the other week ended both in the second. But I've always wanted 5 rounds. Like there's been a bunch of fights where I've just wished I had 2 more rounds to work. So
yeah, you just wanted to put that bit extra in. How long before you like went pro? Like how many fights did you have, both of you?
Well, it was back in the good old days.
So you just have a fight every weekend?
Well, no, I had 5 amateur fights. Like now, yeah, typically that's you want considerably more before you go pro now. But it was It was the good old days where you just jumped in.
But yeah, and there's something lost from those good old days. Like I remember I had a fight one Sunday, and then I fought again on the Saturday straight after, and then I had a grappling competition like 2 weeks later. And now with day before weigh-ins, people are doing like professional weight cuts, having to take all this time off work and what have you for amateur
For an
fights.
amateur fight, you're not getting paid for necessarily.
Yeah, they get a ticket deal, but it's almost. I think someone's lost a little bit there. I guess it gets a little bit closer to the pro experience, but
It must make it harder for people though that like obviously with you guys, say you have 4 fights and then you're going into pro, then when you're going into pro you've got more opportunity then, whereas if you're still an amateur and you're having to say take like 8 to 10 fights, that's a longer time, a longer period. And that's like less time that you have the potential of like getting paid, getting sponsorship, like being able to pursue it as much as you'd want to, because at the end of the day, like you've got to have say that many fights before you reaching a pro mark. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and like it was funny because we've always, when Leon was coming up, we were always joking with him about how like he was always a bit baffled by how few amateur fights we had. I think I was four. You were like 5-1 when you went pro, and I was 4-1 when we went pro. And then just because of the way things worked out, Leon's ended up going pro as a 3-1 amateur,
I see.
and then he's just ended up 2-0 as a professional on Cage Warriors all of a sudden. So,
but if you got the credentials to back it up, though, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Like
Do you know what I mean? It's not like you're putting somebody in a position that they don't want to be in. He wants to be there. He wants to do it. He wants to be pro. Like, and if he feels ready,
COVID has sort of affected a lot of the amount of fights a lot of people have had as well. Like that was a really annoying era.
Yeah,
it was just a struggle for.
Well, I've seen obviously with the UFC, I can imagine like with smaller organisations, like trying to get that many people and that much testing and all that sort of stuff going on would be quite impossible.
Amateur MMA died when that happened.
Oh well, what was it called? There was all those crazy promotions is too strong a word, but lockdown fights, stuff just getting streamed on Facebook that'd be in some shed, or like
Quarantine Fight Club.
Quarantine Fight Club.
It was Darren Moffat from Bradford running it.
How do you do long distance fighting?
Well, there'd be no footage of the fight because I didn't want to get caught out. Just get some footage of someone who's taking the fight somewhere. He posted a picture or a clip of him putting some wraps on in his car, and then he'd post a video. All right, I won the fight.
So it never actually happened. It
was just in some undisclosed location, so they never got
like done under. So that sounds like bare knuckle pikey boxing in like a field somewhere, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? We're like, I'll meet you here.
Well, Quarantine Fight Club ended up being like underpasses a lot of the time. Like very like because he would stream them on Facebook. You would have to find locations that weren't very distinct.
Yeah.
And just like right, put this here. But then a lot of them just ended up being in gyms, like just random gyms with boxing rings that were in Bradford and that sort of area. And he just never really got caught out.
And then it would be like, well, it's not a proper show anyway. We've got this really big fella. Let's make him fight two small fellas.
Oh, so it was like proper random shit. Fair. So, when did you both turn pro then? Like, how old were you? Like, did you both go into Cage Warriors first, or was there anything else that you went into before that?
No, like we both turned pro at 20. Like, George had a sort of pro fight that hasn't gone down on his record, and then had an injury.
I was training for my first pro fight. I was just about to turn 18, and then I got an elbow dislocation in the gym.
Oh.
So someone just literally goes for a takedown, and I'm doing the exact wrong thing. I should be hugging tight, keeping his arm bent, and then just rolling with it and working out that way. And I just stick my arm
your arm down.
I get like full body weight on the side of my arm. And then, I don't know, possibly because I was in the hospital so long, I'd been training 4 hours, sweaty, stinky. I was morphined up and I didn't wash properly for days. I got all kinds of skin infections. I had this serious one on my scalp where bits of my scalp were falling off. So I didn't train MMA again for like a year and a half. I did calisthenics, handstands, bloodborne.
Is that what you're good at doing all like the one-legged like pistol squats, but like underneath you and stuff?
Pretty much like pistol squats and bloodborne. Started university and didn't have like a proper fight until John Wick 2 came out. And when I watched it, because there's so many judo throws and heel chokes and lapel chokes and arm bars, omoplatas, I'm like, you know what? I'll come back once a week, gi, do a little bit of training, and within like 5 months, I had my first proper pro fight.
No. Well, so you were both 20 though, and both in.
Yeah, so I turned pro. I had my first pro fight not too long before George had the injury. And then I kind of kept training, but sort of like maybe just doing a bit more kickboxing. I had 2 pro kickboxing fights, and I'd had another pro MMA fight before George had come back. And then we kind of like floated around different organizations for a while before Cage Warriors. Like we both fought on a few different regional shows,
and then we both fought in Bellator.
Yeah,
like
I mean, in fairness, you'd had a Cage Warriors fight before the Bellator run.
Yeah. So my first Cage Warriors fight was, I took a late notice fight against Middlesbrough.
Well, that was your first professional Cage Warriors fight.
Professional, yeah. They had an amateur fight, but in terms of first professional Cage Warriors fight, I took a fight against Middlesbrough on a few weeks' notice, and that was upper welterweight. Got like boxed up over the course of 3 rounds, quite handily beaten, and then had a curry at 1 a.m. somewhere in Solihull with my face out like this. But then I had a couple of wins on Bellator, and then came back to Cage Warriors. This was during COVID, where again not much was going on, but Cage Warriors is putting on these trilogy events. Where they put back-to-back events.
Yeah.
Friday, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. 3 events, 3 days in a row. I was like, I've got to jump on one of them. And then my first fight back at Cage Warriors was a Dean Truman one.
Yeah, and that was when I made my Cage Warriors debut. That was a good night. That was like, I mean, that was just a whole good experience, really. Like, obviously, because you had to go quarantined in the hotel. There was a lot of people who like weren't necessarily available. Like, say, like Abdul runs a shop and has a job and stuff. Like, he couldn't be away, so we thought Leon's funny. Like, this was before Leon had even fought MMA. We were like, Leon's fun to have around, and he's a useful training partner. He's very good as a training partner. Leon, do you want to come to London? And he was
spent 3 days in a hotel with him.
How old was he then as well? Like around 16, 17 or something, or a bit older.
Yeah, probably something like that. And he was just like, his mind was just blown by London. Because obviously he'd never been out of Doggy.
Had he not?
You remember we were just walking the streets of London outside of like King's Cross and St. Pancras and whatever. We said, it's not the north, if you say all right to someone when you walk past them, they're going to look at you really weird. And he spent about 15 minutes walking past me, all right, just getting a death stare.
It's one of my favourite things to do. You get on the tube and you see someone with a newspaper, and they're like, you most northern you can be, and they're like,
Yeah.
The northerners just come out with like weird times. I remember getting on the bus before title fight with Kyle Driscoll, and he's like proper all-American Division 1 wrestler, has the whole American like patter to him. But I just walked past him on the bus, and you just forget you fighting. You just, oh yeah, that's Kyle Driscoll. I was just like, Alan. And you probably had no idea what that meant.
I thought you were going to be like, daft gun. Do you know, like proper endearing, like, but they're like, you are. Like, the most offensive word you've ever said to them.
I called the Brazilians daft cunt. I had no idea what that meant. But yeah, Leon was, before he'd even fought amateur MMA, was cornering George with like Dan Hardy in the opposite corner.
That's mad.
And that was the show. That was just a fucking mad experience in the whole. Like, that was the show I met my missus. It was just random there. Fucking, obviously, my Cage Warriors debut, your first Cage Warriors win. Like
my first proper knockout was a pro.
Yeah, fucking hell. Like, and then my fight with Jun and Doyle was horrible. It was like physically the most tired I've been in my life, but it was probably my favourite fight in a lot of ways.
Crazy fight. I remember because I didn't have a tricky fight. I won my fight second round KO, and then go back and don't even celebrate. I'm immediately just like corner man mode. I've got to corner Harry. Harry has this stressful fight where he gets dropped in the first round, and then he comes back, throws 10 million punches, and wins the decision. And I remember walking with Harry to go get. He's going to get his post-fight medical. Walking along this corridor, I'm like, you go along. I just kind of just sit down, and have a nap. I'm just so wasted.
I seen a photo of
Wasted
you. I seen a
physically and
photo of you last
emotionally.
week actually
I'm
with
like,
that straight after the fight had all finished and everything, and then your missus had sent me a photo of you just laid on the floor, just eyes closed, and I was like, "Poor lad's grounding himself."
that was also maybe because I was.
She just went, "No, he's just fucking exhausted, mate." I was like, "Oh, fair." I just like you, just taking a moment to like ground yourself, fit like literally and physically, just laid there on the floor, like, "Yep, this has happened." No, she was like, "No, he's having a nap, mate."
what cornering takes it out of you. You know, like you're warming fighters up, where pretty much you're warming up by holding pads and letting them batter you for a bit.
Yeah, just getting beaten up for like an hour or something between multiple people.
Then you get the emotional big fucking explosion and
Yeah, with
come
people
down
win
from-
and lose and stuff like that.
Yeah, especially with Harry winning the belt, and it's just like the floor just becomes incredibly comfortable at that point.
Oh man, yeah, like I said, I didn't know whether it was like you just being like, I need a moment, just give me a moment. And he was like, no, he's just having a nap, pal. He's shattered. I was like, fair. And then I forgot, obviously, you'd had like Joe and you'd been fighting.
Yeah, you warmed Jackson up as well.
Yeah.
Did you? Yeah, fair. So how many fights did you guys have? Obviously, you won your title first. That was July 2020, 2022.
Yeah.
How many fights had you had before you won your title?
So I think I was 9-1. Yeah, 9-1 before fighting for the title.
Your only other loss is that class is Dana White's Contender Series.
Yeah,
that's the only other one, isn't it?
Yeah, so lost to Madas Ramirez and also Wadi on Contender Series. He's signed to fight Garam Katadzalade, I think. That's a very exciting fight.
Yeah.
Really interesting that. But yeah, so I was on a good win streak there. I had like 2 Bellator fights. Like I lost to Madas, won 2 fights in Bellator, then won 3 fights in Cage Warriors, and then I was fighting for the title. So I won the title and defended it twice by knockout. So yeah, I was on like a 5-fight win streak before fighting for the title.
Still got like 10 fights as well, going straight through for like world titles. Pretty impressive, isn't it? Yours is about the same, isn't it? As well, like
yeah, mine like because I had a few more setbacks like earlier in my career. Like obviously I had the Blaine O'Driscoll fight when I was a skeletal vegan that I took on like where I was basically not cutting weight to go to bantamweight. It was bizarre.
Jeez.
Yeah, like, and then I had the Luke Horde fight, which was very controversial. To be fair, like a lot of people thought I won that fight. It doesn't really make that much of a difference now. And then the Smullen fight in Bellator was like just mad disappointing because I just performed really shit. And then that was another one where I feel like if I'd had 2 more rounds, I could have.
Just one of those ones where you can pull the trigger sort of thing, or it's just timing off, or.
He was just like he's a very strong grappler, and I just come out and try to kick him at the start of both the first and the second round, and then that just left me in this like defensive cycle for the rest of the rounds. And then in round 3, I was like, I'm going to just come out and punch him. I was like, oh, this is working now. But by that point, it was like a little bit too little, too late. So at that point, I was 5-3. Like I thought my career was fucked. I thought, well, this is a shit record. This is kind of a shit point to be at, really. And then obviously that was during COVID stuff, so a lot of fights weren't really happening. So I was kind of just mentally, I was kind of wallowing in it a bit, to be fair. But I was never missing the gym or anything. I was still coming in. I was still like, the Smullen loss gave a lot of my training, like give me an objective in a lot of my training. So I was just like, I was in the gym and I was grafting on stuff, even though I wasn't.
You should know where to put yourself.
My head was in the gutter a little bit. I thought, oh, maybe I'm just going to be a coach. Maybe that's just what I'm going to be, which I don't dislike. But I just thought maybe my own fighting career might not necessarily be.
But to be fair though, like how old have you been there? Like sort of 26, something like that.
26.
Yeah, you're still young there though, aren't you?
Yeah,
I'm glad you made the choice not to. Do you know what I mean?
When you're that age, you think you're old because it's just.
I'm 35 and I think I'm old, and people have been like, "Mate, I'm 50. You're not old." Do you know what I mean? You just need to sort your body out. You'll be sound. Like you'll be good.
Yeah, and like I just kept sort of like grafting, and then I seen someone put on Facebook, "Oh, looking for a fight against 8-2 person, must be European." And I thought it'd have been on Cage Steel in Doncaster against someone from Bolton, just like thinking about the record and the weight class and all that, and the date it was on. And then it turns out it was in Croatia against some local Croatian fella. And I was like, yeah, fuck it, we'll take this.
That was COVID, and that fight was like the production, the venue was the gym that his opponent trained at.
Oh, so he was just like literal, like on home turf, home turf as you could possibly get. That's like someone coming in here now and going onto that cage and just being like, "Oh, then,
yeah,
pro fight now, let's go."
It was very, very home turf for him. And then there was a lot like obviously with the O'Driscoll fight and the Smolin fight, I'd never won a fight abroad where I'd never flown home a winner. The Odd fight and the Smolin fight, former lightweight to a grappling heavy, and then the O'Driscoll fight again was short notice, and the only other short notice fight I'd taken to that point was a kickboxing one against Leif Taggart, where I'd lost. So like everything about it was just like situations that had occurred in fights I'd lost before. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it was just because the work in the training camp was that good. I was just insanely confident for that fight, where in a lot of ways I shouldn't have been, but I just was. I don't know if it was just being that much in someone's backyard.
Yeah, you
like
just
it
like
kind of just felt
fuck it, like let's do this.
Yeah, like.
You can't be intimidated, can you? You've got to kind of get your back up on it a little bit, don't you? To be like, right, I've got something to prove here a little bit. Like, screw these guys.
I remember some of the training was so condensed, like 3 weeks. Some of the sessions were insane. Like you do 5 pads with me, and I'm trying to like put the pace on you. Then Abdul would come in. He put his MMA gloves on, and I put my MMA gloves on. Then you do another 3 5s where we're just trying to take you down constantly.
Just dipping in and out between the two of you.
So you've done an hour pretty much of the most intense work you could possibly do.
Yeah, it was. And in fairness, for that camp, did manage to do a really good job of knowing which sessions to do lighter as well. But that was, again, when it was during COVID and lockdowns and stuff, there was no amateur fights going on. He was the only other pro fighter. He didn't have a fight book. So it was kind of like the whole gym was just sort of behind preparing for that one, which was...
That's class, that, to be fair, isn't
cool.
it?
But then that win went, that fight went really well. I dropped the guy twice and choked him. And then that kind of got my current unbeaten streak going. And then it wasn't too long, like it was probably less than 2 months, or maybe just about 2 months after that, I ended up making my Cage Warriors debut. And then, since then I beat Ndoye, I beat Deh, had the draw with Pasquale, then I beat Aimable, Esteban, and then finally got the title fight. So things are going all right.
Yeah, pretty smashed out, to be fair. Both of you are like still like, so they're like young and relatively in your prime, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? Like haven't even really hit your prime, like for like a professional athlete. Do you know what I mean? Especially someone in this sport. Like if you look at anybody else, it's kind of like 31, 32, and that kind of seems to be like you've dialed everything in, you've learned everything about your body, like you've learned so much technique, you've gone training with others, so many coaches and stuff like that. And then obviously you've had so many fights that like everything else kind of sort of doesn't feel as like heavy on you so more, I guess. I don't know, I'm not a fighter, do you know what I mean?
I know, yeah, like sort of like 32, 33, maybe even like 34, like that seems to be the prime for MMA fighters. I think people fall off a little bit sooner in like boxing.
Oh, big time.
I think where it's, well, one, the amount of damage they actually take to the head is...
And they've probably had about 50 amateur fights before they've even gone into like professional, yeah.
And I think it's just like the speed and the reflexes is a bit more important, whereas in MMA, like strength is very important, and there's just so much to learn.
Yeah, there's so many dynamics about it, and there's just that one discipline where you're like you said, it's like the last thing that goes your power and speed, but in boxing, if those things go, there's always somebody younger than you, quicker than you. Do you know what I mean? That's always going to kind of be coming through a lot quicker as well, because that's the way they kind of push boxing.
As far as like actual like your strength in grappling, it does take a long time for that to get to its peak, really. Which I think is like usually for MMA fighters, it's around like 32, 33. Like not that's not a hard and fast rule. Like some people,
I bet that's probably like man strength as well, isn't it? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you get that like middle-aged man strength where suddenly you've just got that extra bit of strength from nowhere that you didn't have when you were a kid because, like you said, your body's developed in the way it's supposed to.
See, and then there's some interesting examples, especially in like MMA, where some people fight on like reflexes and explosivity and cardio and whatever. Think like a Tony Ferguson, and when that drops a bit, it's almost like lose it all.
Yeah,
because he's relying on chin, his ability to just have his hands down.
because it wasn't the
Just-
knockout power, was it?
Yeah,
Do you know what I
basically.
mean? It was the awkward movements, the like rolling under, getting in awkward positions, throwing jabs from like underneath and stuff rather than being conventional.
But then you can get a guy like Glover Teixeira, who in his 20s fought like an old man. So when he became older, which is when he won the belt,
He
it's
was
not like
41, wasn't he?
yeah, it's not like he had to change his style. He had a more like an old man boxing style, like small steps, hands here, overhand right, left hook, and then his grappling was very like single leg, force the half, slowly pass to like 3/4 mount arm triangle. So he had a more like a kind of old man grappling style. So it's almost like he didn't have to change it,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah, I guess there's like especially people like I can imagine like the likes of like say Max Holloway. Do you know what I mean? Like he's still young relatively, but obviously he got into it so young, and then like if he loses any speed, he's going to drop off that little bit. But now he seems to have got that like power that he didn't have. Maybe that's just because he went up weight
I
class
was
and
gonna say,
stuff.
I think he is like his style slowly switching a little bit. I think just sort of adapting to his age. He's very tricky as well. Like it's not just like
It's not the overwhelming of punches; it's the angles they're coming from as well, isn't it? Like
it's the setups. He's very good at setting his work up.
big thing with Holloway as well is that he kind of got in a rhythm of overwhelming people in his title reign. Then he couldn't do that to Volkanovski because Volkanovski was so smart on the outside and had enough power in his shots to just kind of sit him still a bit. But then Holloway's gone back to doing the creative shit he was doing on the come up, like switching stance, giving up the back foot for extended periods. He's happy to be on the back foot, which is I always love like not full on reinventions, but when people change their style as they're getting older and find get back to stuff they were doing before, but then forgot to do, and then add little wrinkles to the game. It's one of the best parts of MMA.
I feel like that's a little bit like the sort of I wouldn't say downfall, but I guess it's the only word I can use. But like sort of a bit of a downfall with Conor McGregor is like he never adapted his style apart from into a boxing style, and then he never went really back to his like experimental like throwing the spinning kicks, throwing the tornado kicks. You know what I mean? Like just stuff that would like where's this come from? Do you know what I mean? And it's obviously because he's a lot heavier. Like he's had injuries, had other stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? But it's like I don't know. Maybe we'll see something different in a month or something. I don't know. But from my perspective, he just seems like he's got stuck in his ways. Do you know what I mean? Like you used to always be like, "Oh, you're a stuck in the mud fighter. You're a stuck in the mud fighter." But like he feels like that now. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like you've kind of slowed down, and now you've still got the power, but like I don't know if your speed's there. Do you know what I mean? Like your accuracy is always going to be there because he's on like good boxing.
He did look incredibly fast in the opening
First round of the Poirier
fight. I don't think it was sustainable.
No.
He wouldn't have sustained it for 5 rounds against him.
Too much aggression.
No.
Way too much aggression in that fight. Anyway, we'll get off fucking UFC fighters, but I guess like the thing I was going to ask you was like, obviously we're talking about getting into pro fights and stuff like that, but like, what's the process of doing it? Like, I assume it's like off camera, but like, you said you just pretty much get a text and be like, this guy, this place, your game.
Pretty much, or like say I'm not sure how much we can talk about, but like we're in the process of sorting George's return fight out. So there's just a
negotiation process.
Just kind of just message Ian Dean like this show.
Yeah, and now we're settled. Kind of getting settled on something, and then waiting for him to say
Yes,
this opponent, and I'll just say yes.
What?
Sign it. We're the easiest people to work with ever. We'll get given an opponent, and we'll just go yes.
Yeah. It's the easiest way to get fights, isn't it? And obviously gain the experience as well. Like you just want to be the best. There's no point in cherry picking fights that you just want, is there? Do you know what I mean?
Literally, I think the one thing was when, because for whatever bizarre reason, my first 2 Cage Warriors fights, I got offered a multiple choice. Bizarre. And so it was like that very first Cage Warriors fight was either, would you like to fight Jun Ndoye or Tobias Harila? And I'm like, well, Ndoye probably he's a bit older, and I actually do remember watching him like well back in the day. Harila's going to be around. I'll fight him down the line. I think I'll have Ndoye. And then the next one was like, were you like dead or aimable? I was like, yeah, I think I'll fight aimable down the line, and I actually did. So I'll take that.
Does that not feel a bit like a computer game though? Do you know what I mean? Like you're like,
it's what these
which
multiple
one?
choices.
Yeah,
that-
multiple
if I end
choices.
up,
Which
if
one
I
I'm
end
gonna
up
fight?
fighting Harila down the line, then these multiple choices that at the end of the day mean nothing.
Yeah. It's kind of like those books you used to get when you were a kid, where you got like this page to like go to whatever, but like inevitably you'd always end up on like the same page at the end. Yeah, fair. So you said before, like you said before, but this is for like both of you. You know, obviously when you have a fight, when you're in the fight, do you prefer it to kind of go a little bit longer? You kind of get to show off a little bit more of what you've like been training for, or are you just happy with it being like, boom, first round, like jobs are good, and do you know what I mean? Like, is there any difference in the way that you feel? Do you know what I mean with it? Or you just like you come out with a 3-round fight and you're like, class, that was mint. Do you know what I mean?
Well, if you get it done in the first round, you know, just on a logical level, that's what you want. And
Yeah.
That's like the best way for it to go. But not every fight's going to happen like that. And then you just get good experiences that just stick in your brain that come from the harder, longer fights. Like I remember when I was fighting Driscoll for the title. I think it was like round 2, round 3. My nose was taking a lot of punishment, and it's all the blood's just gouged into my throat. And I remember like pouring this big gauze of blood onto the floor mid-fight, just so I could breathe. I'm like, it was weird at the time, but it's so cool to have as a memory because that's one of the most vivid memories I have of that whole.
I only ask because with you saying there, like obviously, like that was one of your hardest and like, but probably like your most rewarding fight. Do you know what I mean? But I couldn't imagine getting through like 15 minutes of just pretty much getting ragged about and then being like, "No, that was mint." That.
Like the Ndoye fight in particular was like that fight was mental. I think it's a very like just going into the third round. I think that's probably the most tired I've ever been in my life ever. Like it was just horrendously tiring, but then it was very exchange heavy. Like everything seemed like it was just on a knife edge the whole fight. Like obviously he dropped me in the first round, but then it was just like throughout the entire rest of the fight, because I managed to land some good stuff on him. It just felt like the potential of that happening again was always really close because we were in almost like a K1 style kickboxing pace and exchanges, but for 15 minutes instead of for 9.
Like slug for
with
slug.
wrestling exchanges in as well. But it wasn't like both of us abandoned our fucking defense and we're just letting each other wail away on each other. It was still like there was still adjustments going on, just happening so fast. Like neither.
Yeah,
like
there wasn't a hands down like in the middle, just throw it for the sake of it.
It was like there was adjustments going on that like they were happening, but I didn't even realize they were happening. You know, like it was just because I think a lot of people like try and associate flow state with fighting, whereas I feel like it's almost like more of a trance that you can kind of get dragged along with, and like just being dragged along in that experience with that fight being as cool as it was. I was like, oh, that was fucking sick.
That's mental. That I just couldn't imagine like coming out, like I said, coming out of like 15 or 25 minutes of just gruelingness and then just being like, that was class. That. So obviously, you both fought for a title, which is like pretty mad considering like it's tiny little gym in Borough, and like you both simultaneously hold Cage Warriors world titles in MMA, and you're like the only two brothers to ever have done that at the same time.
I'm not sure. I think we might be the only two. I can't think of any other brothers that have won Cage Warriors titles, but I could be wrong.
That's pretty mad, that. And the fact that as well is like obviously like your coach. It's like, when did he win
2004.
That was the year I left school. 20 years ago this year. That's mad.
Back then. Admiral's just got like a little plaque with his Cage Warriors welterweight champion on it.
That's absolutely mad. Not even like strapped up as well.
Crazy. It was like when I fought for the belt, the guy I was fighting trained out with, still does, he trained out at AKA. So he was on the mats with
Like,
Khabib and
DC.
Islam Makachev and all these fellas. And at the time, you know, training in our gym, but it was Ramadan. Certain people had injuries, so he's training with like Islam Makachev, Khabib, whoever, all these pro fighters, and people I was training with, like, this guy's a barber, this guy's an electrician, this guy, this guy's a bricklayer.
To be fair, I remember you saying something before. I don't know where it was on. It might have just been like a social media post that you put out, but you were saying like the people that tend to have like the biggest like grip strength and stuff is like labourers.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
like proper
100%.
workies, like people that do like 10-hour shifts just constantly on the bricks. Do you know what I mean? Or just like shoveling away or doing stuff like that. I just remember seeing that and just laughing right off because it's just like, yeah, because it's true, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? They've just got those like fibers that other people don't have where they just cinch it.
When you're picking up bricks all day, and they just grab a 2-on-1, and you're like, well, I guess that's their arm now.
I think you remember you saying like it's Joe as well, isn't it? You're the sponsor in Passive.
Oh, Johnny who?
Johnny, that's it.
Yeah.
Sorry, but it's Joe. Yeah, saying like him as well. He's like
He
cinched
wasn't
it
even
in.
that much of a labourer either. He's just a strong. He's just weirdly like physically gifted at fighting. Johnny Hull's an anomaly in many ways. Would never do anything in fights that he'd do in the gym, but the stuff he'd do in fights would really work. He's a nightmare in the gym, but would never actually do any of the stuff that you do in the gym. Actually, in a fight, it was so weird.
You just end up inventing some new triangle that you've never seen before in the middle of a fight.
I've never
Just
seen
in the
that
middle of a
since.
fight.
Yeah, I've never seen that since where he had that weird like arm-in variation of the triangle that he got on that guy. Bizarre.
Fair. So you're just saying there, obviously, with like you during COVID, and then obviously you saying there with like Ramadan and stuff like that. Like when you're having like title fights, is it? I guess it's like a lot of concentration from the gym is kind of like gets put on you guys, like, or is you just kind of stick with how you're doing it, and so you just push extra rounds and stuff in your time with like other trainers and that.
I think where we are coaches and we kind of have a bit of control of the training situation.
I do forget about that as well. I forget
Like-
that you guys are actually like coaches in this gym.
Yeah, kind of. We do end up just taking a bit of our own responsibility with it, being like, right, I've got to do these rounds, or I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Everyone in here is very supportive of everyone. You know, like I've got amateur guys who are being massively helpful, helping me train for that title fight. But like, I would also for their amateur fights in sports halls and stuff, I'll give the same back. Like, I think it is more of like a team environment where everyone wants everyone to win.
I think it's good. I guess it's good with you two as well, though, because obviously, like, yous are always in here. Like you said, you're coaches, you've got access to the gym all the time, so yous can just be like, right, let's do a couple of extra rounds here. You know what I mean, between the two of yous, because at least you both know like your strengths, like your weaknesses within it. Do you know what I mean? So you can be like, right, actually, let's push this another two. Do you know what I mean? When they're going home or something, or like you said, when you're in here during the day. So like, it must be good just to have like a constant training partner. Do you know what I mean? If you need it.
And it kind of parallels with when I fought for the belt, and now when you've won the belt, is when I was about to fight for the belt, there was a few weeks because Harry fought in Belfast, had a really hard fight. He couldn't grapple with me, he couldn't spar with me, but he was on the outside, his eyes were there, giving me just the right bit of advice at, every moment in the session, helping me make the right plan of each session. And then his fight camp, biggest fight of his life, I had a jaw injury, I had a broken jaw. I couldn't spar. I grappled like 2 rounds with him throughout his full fight camp. But it meant that I was on the sides, I could see different things. Game plan for an opponent that changed in the end. But
Yeah, it was kind of weird because my original opponent was the sort of stocky southpaw grappler, kind of similar to judo techniques, but it wasn't judo that he did. And then
A little bit of like Sambo-esque.
yeah, kind of. It's called the Kuresh, some Central Asian wrestling where they wear a gi.
Mm.
But like, it was the game plan for him, and I felt like everything for that was getting really dialed in. And then obviously, yeah, the visa thing, and then it was kind of just you just got to figure things out. And then with short notice stuff, like you can't get too in depth with things. Like everything about the game plan for the Orlando fight was very simplified. You know, like you've kind of got to work with stuff that a lot of stuff that you do anyway, and then you just got to be very wary of things. You know, like George's advice when that fight came was much more stripped back and simple, just like stuff that you can just follow without having to like do loads of programming for.
Yeah, and like look for specific techniques that they're going to do because it's more of like a generic format in terms of like his approach to MMA.
Yeah, and just like these are things to be wary of. This is where you don't necessarily want to be like, you know, like a little bit like when just I defended the takedown and ended up kind of in mount. I just didn't take the mount because Jordan says, "Like, might there's the chance that leaves your leg vulnerable." And I'm like, yeah, fair enough. I'll just
straight away pulled off.
Yeah, like because things were going well in strike. You know, maybe if things weren't going as well in the striking, maybe we'd have had to take the risk of like trying to be on top of him a bit more. But things were going well, so
I guess that's one thing I was going to ask about this as well. Like, it must be quite hard, like when you're in fights, to like try and because you're always going to have a game plan, aren't you? Like you said, obviously you're strategically planning to fight a person. Like you've had dropouts, like in terms of people like fighting or change of opponents. Like, have you had many in terms of that? Like,
yeah, especially in the phase where because it took a long time for me to get a title shot. I'd earned it, and then the original time it fell through because my opponent tested positive for COVID on the day. And then it was getting so that was in November, and then it got rescheduled for March. And then some Italian ex-UFC fella got arrested. And then I'm like, "What? I've been training for this day. I still want to fight." So I took a non-title fight, catch weight. And then, you know, I kind of ended up on a similar fighting grapplers for a while. You know, boxing and sprawling, kind of sprawl and brawl approach. So a lot was quite similar for a while, but you know, it's the difference between training for an opponent and training for the martial arts himself. And that's the thing that if you only train for fights, you know, there's some fighters that just look about outside a fight camp and only train for the fight. You're not training yourself as generally in building up
like as many skills across many different platforms as possible.
Whereas I feel like that time out of camp where you're training and you make yourself adaptable and you get a lot more looks and a lot more exposure and at a lower intensity where you can play, then when you're in camp preparing for someone specifically, if it changes, you're much more suited for it.
Yeah, because you can just switch onto them instead. It's not like, oh, right, now I need to change the entire game plan. It's just, cool, tweak this, focus on that. And then if anything changes within the fight, we adapt as we go along, sort of thing.
Yeah, like that is the thing with game plans is like as important as it is, you can't marry yourself completely to, you know, like if the game plan is something and that something is just not working in the fight, then you need to figure it out. You know, you need to kind of like trust your in-fight senses a bit as well. Like you've just got to develop those senses through training, through experience, through fighting, and then if shit's not working, you need to kind of just feel what is actually working.
I was going to say, I guess they're like, I was basically going to say, like, I guess you have to just like constantly change. Like, you can't have that because if you keep that mentality of like, oh well, I wanted to do this, and it doesn't go right. Like, you can't have a negative mentality when it comes to fighting. Do you know what I mean? You've got to have some sort of positive outcome, don't you? Do you know what I mean? At all times, like even if you're on the floor, someone's in full mount, you've got to be like, right, cool, it's fine. Like, you've surely got to have that in your head at all times, telling yourself like, it's okay, we're cool, right? You've been there before, you know how to get out of this. Because if you panic, if you sort of start to doubt yourself, that's where surely like loss is going to come in.
I mean, when I got dropped by Pasquale, I just fully accepted it being knocked out and then just let my training take over. And I got off and I was fine.
Just automatic response.
Yeah, it was just like, you know, like I didn't stress about it. It's just I got whacked and I decked it and I was like, all right. And then just sort of calmly did the things that needed to be done to stop myself getting whacked further.
I couldn't imagine that in a fight. Like, I've only ever been knocked out like outside of, like, I've got hit with a riot shield before at a festival one time, and I was just out cold and then came around and like 10 minutes later on top of a tent, just like wondering where I was and didn't know what had happened. Do you know what I mean? But I couldn't imagine being in a fight and then having to wake up and being like, you know what I mean? Like, as you get rocked or something, it just for a second you've gone and then you're back and then you're like, Oh, fuck, this is what I was doing. Right, back into it. It's all good. We're good.
And James Blunt concerts
Yeah, don't. Get pretty wild, mate. Yeah, absolute madness. So how does it feel when you both win a title? Obviously, I was at your fight. I watched yours on TV at the time. It was obviously two totally different things. Being in Newcastle, one for me was pretty cool. Like, obviously, I've mentioned some sponsor, but it was pretty cool for me because I remember seeing you. You were stood there with like a Pumphrey's cup in your hand, and I used to work for them. So it was kind of nice to have this sort of like roundabout moment of like you stood there with like this training top on, and then they've just got like off the ground written across the middle of it, and you're holding this coffee cup, and I'm like, yeah, but he's fighting in there on the headline. Do you know what I mean? I had this kind of like little buzz about me, just like, oh, this isn't in this. But then when you actually won, I was like, I don't think I've ever gone so wild for somebody that I don't massively know. Do you know what I mean? I was fucking gone mental. Yeah, I lost my voice. I couldn't speak on the Sunday.
It is, especially those moments where you do win a title, because obviously the like the overall end goal is just to keep training and keep doing better, and like the training and the fighting itself is the reward, I think. But like the title fight, it's even though it's a Cage Warriors title and you're kind of using that to get to the UFC, and there's like obviously goals after that. It's just a nice like point where you can just stop and just be like, I don't really need to think about what's next right now. I can just be happy with what.
It's like a benchmark, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's like a good benchmark, like a stepping stone you've got there, appreciate it while you're there, sort of thing, and then you'll look after. Do you know what I mean? At the moment, you don't want to.
And both of our runs to the title, it wasn't like we just had to fight, got offered the belt, fought for it, won it, because we had so many. Both of us.
Both of you have had like almost a year
pullouts.
between like supposed to having a fight, haven't you? Really?
Yeah, we both had so many like pullouts and fall throughs and fights we took in the meantime.
Yeah.
So it was really like extended processes for both of us.
Do you not think that made it like? Do you think that made it feel a little bit more special, though? The fact that like it'd been so long between it, and you'd been expecting it, you'd had them booked, and then suddenly, like you said, obviously for you, COVID, people pulling out on the day, like. Obviously, your fight, you were supposed to have someone like 3 weeks before. You couldn't get visa. Like, you had visa issues, didn't he?
Like, I don't know, just I think where it had been talked about for so long for me, where I'd won the Amiable fight, where like at that point I was the number one contender, and it was just like a question of once Paul Hughes was not really fighting, obviously he had other shit going on, which we didn't really realize, but like. Once the belt had got vacant and everything, it was just kind of a question of, like, how are you going to fight? Like, I'd earned it ages before I actually got it. But by the time I was in the swing of fight camp, that kind of felt right. It felt like, all right, I'm finally doing what I'm supposed to be doing now.
Well, I've actually got this on there because, like, obviously you guys come into the shop, and that's one thing you said to me. It was just like, I've been training for it for that long that it doesn't feel like I'm training for it. Do you know what I mean? Like, as such, like you've been preparing for it for that long that you're just prepared, like you're just ready to go in and do no matter what. Do you know what I mean? Like kind of what we said there. It doesn't matter what the game plan is. You're just ready. Do you know what I mean? You're just ready to go in and show what you can do.
But then it comes to a cycle. Like it'll have been the longest time in my career. Really, I've had from fighting. By the time I fight again, it will have been a full year. Last time I defended the title was back in April last year. Had the loss in contenders, had some things, had the jaw injury, one of the biggest injuries of my life. So when I fight to defend the belt again, it's not going to feel like trying to defend the belt. It's really to win it.
Yeah, it's like you're winning it again.
And a come full cycle.
I was going to ask about that because obviously, like with like you've just said there, like winning a title and stuff like that. Like you're always prepared for it. But like the feeling behind it, does it feel any different when you're defending a title to going to fight for a title?
See, because this is like the biggest period of inactivity I've had, and I was always priding myself on activity. Take fight. Even if I can't fight for the belt, I'm not going to sit out. I'm going to take another fight. Take a fight. I'm going to defend the belt. My first defense. Put the fight together in like 4 weeks, and I was like, I just want to be active. I'll take this fight. Yep. Then defended the belt again. And then coming into that contenders fight is kind of felt so routine that I was like, well, I expect this to happen. It's like granted. Whereas when I first fought for the title against Driscoll, there was so many unknowns and so many fears of this, that, and the other that I'd go to bed and I'd just think
A
about it at like
million
3 in
things
the
going through
morning.
the mind.
Think about different scrambles and changes that could happen. That this period of inactivity due to injuries and otherwise, come back to that. I don't even have an opponent yet.
I was going to ask you about that as well, though. Like, how do you like? I think we've kind of sort of partially spoke about it with you saying about like you end up turning sort of more into like a spectator and like being able to do other sides of stuff. So, but like, what's it like when you're like, obviously, this is your career. Do you know what I mean? Is fighting, and if you're injured, you can't fight. So, like, does that mess you up a bit, or is it just kind of like right, focus into something else? Do you know what I mean? Like you said, you just like right. Well, I can sit there and I can watch the lads, do you know what I mean? And I can watch Harry and I can see what he's like doing right, doing wrong, what he needs to improve on, do you know what I mean? Like obviously with you both being coaches as well, like do you just kind of take that like approach of going, you know what, right, that's happened, step back, like now we'll focus on something else? Or is it a little bit like shit, do you know what I mean? Like I really wanted to fight.
See, so I've almost been pretty much a coach for a year now because of the way circumstances have been, and a lot of the best experiences of my life have been in the corner, have been in the gym, coaching people, just seeing these young lads have come in and then 6 months later, the way they move around the mat, the way they hold the stance is completely different, and then how they develop into the culture of the gym. These are some of the best things that happened in my life.
I guess that's
overall.
like quite like fulfilling and rewarding because obviously like I know you've got teams, I know you've got like training partners, you've got coaches and stuff like that, but at the end of the day it's a very singular sport, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like the rewards, like yeah, you might share them with people, but at the end of the day you're the one that's holding the belt, you're the one that kind of gets that little bit of sort of notoriety behind it. Do you know what I mean? Obviously everyone will come up with you because you've brought them up with you and they're pushing you up as well. But
I think on maybe from an outside perspective, like the actual thing that most people see, which is the fight itself, and I think that is very individual. But the day to day existence of MMA and being an MMA fighter is the team and the interaction you have with the people around you. It's like the closest friends I've ever had, and I think I ever will have, are in the gym. There's that.
you've kind of got to be when someone's crotches in your face, though, surely. Get a bit close to people.
Yeah, I mean, I like physically as well.
I'm just messing with you.
Try not to be friends with oil checkers, but yeah, like the day to day existence of MMA, which to me is the biggest reward. You know, like the day to day coaching, the day to day just being in fight camp, the day to day just training to get better. That is very much a thing that involves a lot of other people, and you're interacting with a lot of other people, and you're being around a lot of other people. So as much as MMA, the actual the actual act of fighting is very individual. I think on the whole, it isn't. Like we have become considerably more sociable and acceptable to be around as human beings.
Because of the people that you're with.
Yeah,
and you
through
meet.
being in the sort of melting pot of the combat sports gym, because you do get just so many different people from different backgrounds, all kind of.
It must be really fulfilling as well, though, because like you guys go to other gyms as well, don't you? So you've been to like Next Gen and places like that. So it must be pretty cool to meet like other lads. And like you said, if you're not really comfortable talking to people, you have to get comfortable talking to them. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm the same as you guys. Like I'm quite a sociable person. Like the shoppers kind of give me that front and that mask, if that makes sense, to be able to like talk to anybody and banter on. Like I was nervous as shit coming to see you, and I'm like, but I see you every other fucking day. Do you know what I mean? But it's because I have to talk and actually have like a full conversation, not just a no mate, yeah right, how's it going? Do you know what I mean?
Have a bagel.
Yeah, have a bagel. What's the hardest thing like about being a fighter?
probably either injuries or skin infections.
Yeah, it's kind of the actual training sessions, actual fights themselves. That's what you are there for. It's all the extra stuff around it. Getting injuries, having to juggle other aspects of outside life like family and finance and what have you with it. But kind of not the actual fighting and training itself. It's having to balance the other things.
Yeah, the things around it to make it a career, essentially, or like, because I imagine it being pretty hard. Like, I think that's what you wrote this like the other week, and it's like it must be hard for people that want to do it full time, but at the end of the day, like, if you don't have sponsors and if you're not like at a certain level, like you're not going to be able to. Do you know what I mean? Or you have to have like other people that help like support you and stuff like that. Otherwise, it is quite hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, how many people do you see that probably coming to the gym, probably have loads of like aspiration, got like loads of like natural talent, could probably do it, and then just after like maybe like a year or two, they're like maybe just coming in once a week just to train because they can't commit themselves to like maybe wanting to fight.
Yeah, I think the thing that you kind of need to be someone who can make it in this and then end up making it full time is the sort of unhinged kind of
Make or break person.
well, like I wouldn't even say it's just that where you can like it filters into every decision you make where you like MMA that much and it takes that much of an importance in your life that it does filter into every decision you make. And then there are going to be big bits, like both of us had moments where, like obviously I was on about it after the Smolin fight where I was like, well, maybe I'm fucking not out for this for whatever reason. Obviously you had the elbow dislocation, the skin infection, like there will be these big moments where it doesn't particularly look like continuing is possible, or it definitely from like a logical standpoint doesn't look like it's worth it. But it's just got that stuff's just got to not matter really, and you're just going to keep doing it.
It's like when Abdul got to the UK, and he had to work all these difficult, horrendous shift hours at all these different places to support himself, and
I guess it's just what you're willing to put in, isn't it? Like how much you're willing to go. Like it doesn't matter what you've got going on around it. Like as long as you're willing to like sort of dedicate yourself anyway. Like so you can go do 3 jobs, but you're still going to go train. You're still going to do that because that's your passion. Like that's the thing you want to do. You've got no choice.
Like Abdul, he still does all these different jobs and is one of the busiest people ever. And he'll come in on Thursday. He's retired however many years, and he'll put more rounds wrestling in than anyone else. It's just. He'll train 7 days a week a lot of the time. He said it to us. Like, I retired so long ago. I'm training 7 days a week.
He's one of those people that doesn't know what retirement is, though. Do you know what I mean? Like
you can't compute without doing it. You kind of have to be that person where you can't. Things don't align. You can't just.
I feel like you've got to be that person anyway if you kind of want to be like. Obviously, with you guys, it's like physical thing of being like a world title holder. Like you've got to be that type of person, don't you? There's no ifs, buts, or maybes. Like you kind of have a doubt in this game as to like, like you can always have those brief moments in between of like fleeting thoughts of like, fucking hell, this is hard. Like fucking hell, is it worth it? Or whatever else. But at the end of the day, it's that perseverance pushing through and going, just do it. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah, and I was just about to say that going back to Abdul as well. It's like obviously we didn't have the most opportunities when we were coming up, and then obviously Abdul had even less opportunity. Like Abdul was fucking preparing for these massive fights on Cage Warriors, essentially in like the studios of commercial fitness gyms where they would like lay 4 mats down to spar on and stuff. Like
be shouting at me if you hit a punch bag and stuff like that, or like kick the punch bag because you're only supposed to punch them.
Yeah, like that was his training back in the day, and it's like obviously he's built this gym in Middlesbrough, and then we've come through and like got opportunities because of this. I think the sort of goal there is just to make the next generation of fighters have an easier, from Middlesbrough and have an easier time. Well, not necessarily an easier time, but just have
a more progressive journey,
more access to opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess that's like the sport on a whole, though, isn't it? Really, because like we're talking about from the start, there is like I remember my my dad used to like. I remember when it first kind of got televised. It used to be on like Bravo. I think it was like it turned to Men and Motors or something after a certain time or some shit like that. And I remember watching it when I was like really young. I say really young. I was probably like fucking 14 or something, and just being like, "Fucking hell, this is mental." No, it must be longer than that anyway. Because when did it come out? It's like 30 years ago.
I'm trying to think when Bravo
Yeah.
ceased to be. Rest in peace.
Yeah,
Bravo.
so I must have probably been about 7 or 8, do you know what I mean, when it
Yeah.
came out. And obviously there was like, nobody knew what it was then. And then it took like sort of 10 years before it kind of got like anywhere near a mainstream media, do you know what I mean? And before like they started bringing video games and all that sort of stuff out. And then it's been another 10 years. And then you've had to have like the likes of like Ronda Rousey and Conor McGregor and people like that have kind of like, it's not just them that have put that light on the sport, but they've used them, do you know what I mean, to kind of like push them out into the masses sort of thing. And then now, so like each time it's surely, it's like, it's kind of like a generational thing, isn't it? Like each generation or each 10 years, like the gym is going to get better, like the opportunities are going to get better, like hopefully anyway, fingers crossed. I thought you would have said weight cut, but to be fair, I've seen a video of you just sat there asking random questions. Like
the weight cut in it. It's like there's bits where you get hungry that when your weight's coming down, but if you do it well,
I just thought that would have been like when you just sat there. Like,
actually, when you know it's like, okay, it's go time, I've got to get the weight off, and you're like really in the diet and you're really into the weight cut, that's not the hardest thing. The hardest, because, fighters a lot of the time are very all or nothing people. So a lot of the time, very all one way or all the other. It's like eating everything.
Yeah, it's kind of what you were saying. You're like constantly in the gym and kind of sort of maintaining a certain level of like.
Yeah, it's kind of just maintaining is the tricky thing.
I can't be a good influence on you guys for that though. Surely with the amount of fucking cookies and everything.
I'm currently in my just do whatever the fuck I want phase. I'll probably get back to being a bit more sensible next week, but where I'm a little bit of a smaller featherweight, it's not as much of an issue for me. So like, if I'm outside of fight camp, I can self-regulate a lot better than George can.
Really?
Like I can get up to weighing 7.3. I've been able to get up to like 90 kilos within a week and a half.
Jeez.
So I get back up to 78, 80, whatever it is in the cage, changes from fight to fight. But I've gotten up to pretty much 90 kilos a week and a half, 2 weeks after the fight. Because it's the same mentality you have in the gym. When you're training, you think, well, I have to do all my positional rounds against the fence, on my back, top guard work. I need to get my strength and conditioning sessions in. I need to get my bag work sessions in, my pad work, this amount of sparring, this amount of wrestling. You need to tick off every box. And then when you're in that little period where you're not training and you're just eating whatever you want, you're like, okay, I need to tick off every box.
So I need a parmo, I need a pizza.
I need the cheesy garlic bread, I need the chips, okay, I need dessert, I need a cheesecake. Well, I can't just finish that dessert. I'm going to be hungry again in an hour. So I've got to get some cereal ready. So I can have 2 bowls of that before bed. I've got to get the full English.
I can imagine with like the amount that you like train as well, though. Do you know what I mean? It's got to be one of those things where body's just clamming for food anyway. Do you know what I mean? No matter what. Like I'm the opposite of you guys. Like I'm more of like I do like 12 hours endurance, like, and barely eat during it. And because I'm surrounded by food that much, I'm like, I don't want to touch any of this. I'm sick of seeing food. Do you know what I mean? So like I have to like sort of the way to take a detox, kind of have to like take a bit of time off work to be able to go like, right, I'm going to make some banging food and I'm going to eat this, I'm going to eat whatever, because if I don't want to look at it. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, obviously you're back training, but like you went, like your first week after fighting, you weren't like, oh, well, tomorrow I'm back in the gym, are you? Do you know what I mean? You were like, no, I'm going to take a week off. I'm going to like have a bit of a like relaxed detox, like spend some time with the missus, and then I'll get back into it after.
Yeah, and then like the fight camp itself was pretty hard. Also, like had few injuries and stuff going into the fight, and I managed to hurt my bicep punching. So I'm still in that phase of just
like recovery.
Yeah, and just not having any kind of like stress with any of my thinking. So like I'm kind of just very chill at the minute. Like I'm not as structured. I'm kind of putting a bit of structure back in. I was back coaching last night and it was great fun. We're just having like just a little bit of time without structure.
Well, you are both in a pretty good position, aren't you? Like with obviously both holding the belts. Like you're just coming back from injury and stuff anyway. So it's like they've kind of you've got that time. Do you know what I mean? That time to sort of like for yourselves and to like dedicate to the gym and stuff like that, rather than just being all focused on fighting and I need to not eat this and not eat that. Not that I see you do. Do you know what I mean? You were like 2 weeks before the fight or whatever. You were still enjoying like some tasty food and all that sort of stuff. So I just thought it was mental because like I just every time you see like Embedded or anything like that, they're all like absolutely emaciated. But it always seems to be people that are like cutting way too much. Do you know what I mean? Like way too much for the UFC. Like
I'm just not. I'm not keen on adding unnecessary suffering as well. Like like I could potentially make bantamweight again. What would be the fucking point?
I couldn't imagine you making bantamweight. Like I don't know why I'm saying this because like I'm 6 foot, just short of 6'3", and I'd never go above 155. Yeah. Like I'm always between like 145, 155. Like if I'm not very well and like I've not eaten much, I'll drop down. Do you know what I mean? But I'll never go below.
You would go bantamweight if you were fighting it. Like
but I'd die.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I'd have nothing on me because I've got no body fat. But so I couldn't imagine you like going to 135 because that's such like.
Oh, it's not worth it.
No, not at all. Cool. Well, to be honest, I've just got some daft questions to ask you.
I'm all for the daft questions.
Yeah, I thought you might like these ones, to be fair. So the first thing I was going to ask actually was, how the fuck did you just start doing random video game breakdowns? Was it just you just one day just watching something and was like, or was it like you seen the Baz Rutten one and were like, actually, yeah.
Well, I have quite a ADHD kind of approach to me content. Yeah, I'm breaking down this. I'm gonna help do this on the bag. I was just thinking, it popped up on YouTube. Like, oh yeah, it's Baz Rutten did all the combinations. I was thinking about how, even though it's super old school, Baz Rutten's Big Book of Combat, some of the oldest instructionals in MMA, really. A lot of younger people today, younger kids starting MMA, would be really well served to go back and look at Baz Rutten tutorials and stuff. It's quite heavy-footed, but it sets the fundamentals there. And I was just looking at the combinations again. They're really sick combinations, and a lot of them are quite functional in terms of the fight. I'll do a breakdown of them. Plus, it's kind of I'm trying to find stuff to break down because I did so many breakdowns of my own fights, and that blew up on TikTok. I'm getting mildly virulent.
Virulent. That doesn't sound like the right word. Virile. I mean, sorry, viral.
Getting a couple million views and stuff. But then my last opponent and his coach were using them as ammunition against me to game plan. So I'm like, what can I break down that doesn't give away
I didn't even think about that as well, yeah. That's mad, that, as if they were just like, right, so he's doing this. Okay.
So
they didn't even have to do the work, you were doing it for them. So it's like a cheat code, but you're just going, here you go, guys.
Yeah, so it's like, who can I break down? What can I break down that's not going to give away my own stuff? Nico Bellic from GTA 4.
That's absolutely mean that.
Unless I just start doing all his combinations and fights accidentally.
Have you started doing like any film ones and stuff like that? Because obviously you were saying you watched like John Wick 2 and all that sort of stuff as well.
I need to get into some film ones, but
you need to go back into like some old school like martial arts ones, or like on back and stuff like that, like where it's just ridiculous, but like incredible at the same time.
All these young people today seeing these clips of Alex Pereira doing that blocking training where he's pulling his heel behind his back to check the low kick. That's on back.
Yeah.
It's like
everyone's amazed that he's just done this little fucking, I can't remember what it's called in football, like Rabona or whatever it is, but like
all this stuff, so many of these things are from on back.
Yeah.
I mean, Anderson Silva credited the elbow he knocked Tony Fruckland out with on, like he credited on back for that. It was this one where he went. He like went down and up because he saw it, and then he was like, "Oh, I think there's potential in that." And like just would go into his garage twice a day and practice it 100 times.
Just going down.
Yeah, and then his wife and his coaches were saying, "Don't throw the elbow." He's like, "No, it can work. No, don't throw it. It's stupid." And then he ends up.
That one on the end of on back though, like the first one where he's like 2 elbows down, jumps off somewhere about 12 foot high through the back of the spine. Then you see that, like kind of what we were talking about with that TV program, where you suddenly just see the inside of his like body and like every vertebrae just pops out. Do you know what I mean? It's like the most unrealistic thing, but so cool at the same time.
That might be Warrior King, wasn't it? Where it's like all the big pro wrestlers coming.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Got to attack the elephant's tendons or whatever.
he gets the.
Oh, that's when he puts them on the bones, isn't it?
Yeah.
Over his things, and he's like, "Gada!" Yeah, that's so mad. What's your favourite Tekken characters?
So,
Well, individually.
I mean, I'm currently playing as Paul because he's simple enough where I don't have to spend a lot of time in practice mode because I don't really get a lot of time to play games, so I can kind of just go on. He's not like a super high level character, but he's simple. So I'm enjoying playing as Paul at the minute.
Paul's the one with the. I haven't played Tekken since Tekken
His
5.
head is
Yeah, was he more of like a conventional like boxer style
like
with
judo,
like through?
judo, karate, judo, and kenpo or something.
Yeah, yeah, definitely so.
Like they initially kind of had him as a Ken, like they wanted him to be a rival character to Kazuya, but then they sort of abandoned that. They were like, I don't know, this is just us completely copying them. So they've completely just cut out any connection with him and Kazuya. I do really like Kazuya as a character. I think he's always been pretty cool. I like a bit of Bruce Irvin, but yeah.
Brian Fury is a really good one.
Brian Fury.
Well, they've balanced him all as the years have gone by, but especially on Tekken 3, he was so broken and so overpowered. And plus, he has a load of very like kickboxing style combinations, like inside low kick into right hand. And like from Tekken 4 onwards, the Kazuya and Jin Kazama, like their karate just exploded and they started putting Kyokushin karate stuff. There's this Kyokushin karate guy called Ryu Narashima who's like 66 kilos. So if you don't know like Kyokushin karate, they can punch the body, but they can't punch the head. But they can kick and knee the head. So they end up like 3 inches away.
It's bare knuckle.
So they end up 3 inches away, body shotting each other, and then suddenly, whoop, an axe kick comes over. And Ryu Narashima, he was like a 66 kilo guy who'd won open weight tournaments. So he's fighting 90, 100 kilo fighters and he's getting knockouts. And he was doing motion capture for Jin Kazama and some of like Kazuya Mishima's combos. And then you can find footage of Ryu Narashima doing these combinations. Like he does this right low kick, and with his leg in midair, he'll pull it back on one leg, throw a body shot. And then you can find like 10 videos of him knocking people out in these Kyokushin karate tournaments.
Yeah, like, I actually found it because Kazuya on Tekken 4 has like a left high kick to lead left straight to low kick the body hook. And I found instructionals of Narashima showing that. I was like, what the fuck? That is literally the I think in Kazuya's command listing it's called Demon's Wrath because obviously they can't just have normal names for the moves. I was like, oh shit, that's that. But then there's a newer character who came out in Tekken 7 who like became DLC character a bit after I finished playing that, and like they've just brought her out as DLC character for Tekken 8 called Lydia, who's like mad karate heavy. And I think the person who did some of her mocap was Tetsuya Naka, who is he's acted in a lot of films as like the karate guy. Like I think what was fucking stupid film High Kick Girl, where there's one of the scenes where it just it shows it in slow mo afterwards as well for whatever reason.
Oh yeah, because the film's an hour and 15 minutes long, so they must have not filmed enough and realised if we put a slow mo of every head kick in. But one, because people were actually getting head kicked by the look of it, and two, it's like, well, we'll actually get the film over an hour's runtime.
Yeah, so there's like a bit of Tetsuya Naka just like full on front kicking this guy, this kneeling guy in the face. And it's like, oh, that guy has just full on got chinned for the sake of a film. But there's one of my favourite martial arts movies ever is called Kuro Obi, which is like the Japanese from Black Belt, which is just about these two karate black belts, and they sort of go on different paths, and they have this fight scene at the end. But Tetsuya Naka is one of the main actors in that, and I think my favourite fight scene is the one at the end of that film. And I'm like, oh, it's fucking, he's now doing mocap for a Tekken character. Like there's a few other like Minoru Suzuki did some of King's mocap back in the day.
That's why I wanted to ask you guys, because I knew that you would both, especially when you were doing like the fight breakdowns. I knew that you wouldn't just be like, oh, I like playing as like Hayachi or thingy because he's this. It's like because he's actually like know the breakdowns of each individual fighter. Do you know what I mean? Like their styles, their techniques, who it's based off, their motion capture sort of stuff that's in there. Because like nobody else really looks at that. So like when you were playing it as well, that you was proper like, right, I need to. Like bit more of a button basher. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'm pretty good at Tekken, but not to the point where I think yous would be. Where yous like obviously your brain are tuned into fighting, so yous would be like, right, well this combination. So do you use the lock-in combinations and stuff when you're playing, or
Not necessarily. I think
Right,
the things that translate from this to Tekken is maybe just the ability to decide on mix-ups. But I think that's the thing, and like I tend to struggle against characters that their moves don't look as much like fighting moves, and I think that might be something. There might be something to that. Like I tend to struggle against fucking
like Jack or something? It's just sort
Kuma's a particular bugbear. I really struggle against Kuma's because none of his moves actually look like
proper fight moves.
So I feel like that is actually a thing.
It's like if
But
Eddie or whatever, and he goes to a capoeira, and you're just like, well, I'm definitely axe kicking you as that's coming down. Like the minute you got to roll over, axe kick down. You know what I mean? It's like I'm going straight in here. Well, I was going to ask, what computer games do you play the most? Like, what are you playing at the most at the moment?
You were on a big Tekken 8 phase. I had a long phase where I couldn't get time to get. Anyway, I've really got into Gran Turismo 4. Like my New Year's resolution for this year, I've got this massive backlog of games I've owned, I've paid for, and I'm going to at least give an honest attempt at them all. And I was struggling to get, even games that I recognize this is a good game, I'm struggling to get into. Then I got this mad phase on Gran Turismo 4. Played that loads. And now recently I've just started playing this game called Wanted Dead, which it's on PS5. By all, logistical points of reason, it's a rubbish game, but I fucking love it. It's like you just run around with a katana sword and a rifle, having these.
Just like a zombie game.
Voice acting's awful. There's some takedowns in it that are like legit, just copy and paste takedowns from John Wick films.
Really?
So some of the best ones, obviously, overall, like recent years, like Devil May Cry 5, Doom Eternal, sequel.
yeah,
These are the best. Nioh 2.
it was like obviously on a historical level. It was like God Hand. It was just a mad underrated game, an underappreciated game. That's really really good.
Neither you stream.
No,
I know it takes up a lot of time, doesn't it, and resources.
I tried it, and it didn't really like. I'm like, I should just make the content in that time, and then gaming's my own time. It's kind of it would ruin it for me if I stream because
I get it.
It's almost when you get into a game, it's like a connection to your childhood.
And you don't want to have to be like sat there, like turning around and going like, "Hi guys," like, "Oh, you're right. Oh, thanks. Yeah. All right. No, I don't want to do that side mission. Fuck off." Do you know what I mean? I'm doing this. Like, you just want to play the game and just immerse yourself into it. Like,
you get comments on screen. Oh, Dick Thought 69 says on camera. I'm like, oh.
I could just imagine what you used to though, just because you are like really funny lads. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, you got like good TikToks, like just good social media and like good like entertainment presence. Do you know what I mean? Like not many people do when it comes to like especially fighters and stuff like that. And you lads just don't. You're obviously super serious about what you do, but you don't take it yourself seriously. Do you know what I mean? Like that's one thing, and like that's one thing about I think my business partner like really likes about you. Do you know what I mean? Is like he doesn't know anything about fighting or like not even just boxing. Do you know what I mean? He knows nothing about this sport. And obviously, like you guys started coming in, I was like, I'd love to do a bit of sponsor, sort them out and whatnot. And he was just like, yeah, because like you got chatting on with us, and it wasn't just about like the fighting. Like you had banter with him, like you were talking about coffee, like you're talking about the food, like you know what I mean. Like you just had like this good bit of banter that kind of worked. So like you streaming, I just think you're both be hilarious. But I kind of get it.
I don't have the technology to stream properly, but now my phone. For ages, I didn't have a phone that had like a working back camera. I only had a front-facing camera, so I might just plonk my phone up, and pointing it at the telly stream, the telly, and just be like low-tech streaming.
Yeah, so people would jump on it. You'd be fucking surprised, mate. It's absolutely mad. What's the most realistic fighting game apart from UFC? Would you say?
I wouldn't necessarily say they were.
Are they awful with the grappling and stuff like that? Like,
there's just,
have you played 5?
I've not played much of them, but
I've not really played into the EA era.
Oh mate, number 5's the movement. They've tried to do something with it, and the grappling's awful. It really is awful. They've like stripped it back even more. Do you know what I mean? So it's less complicated, and you're kind of like, yeah, but now you're taking the hard part out of the game.
Oh, outside of like old school, like Virtua Fighter, Tekken style quick grab animations with a little tech can tech out of it and cancel it, or that very quick exchange. Grappling doesn't work in games because it's so haptic and it's so kinesthetic. You can't carry that over. But
like EA MMA, actually, before EA had the UFC license, they made an MMA game with like Strikeforce and stuff in it. That one, the grappling kind of worked because it wasn't necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily it was realistic, but it was just very systematic. Like it was like you can, you can punch to set up, pass. It was kind of like, it was very black and white, which obviously actual grappling isn't that, but it actually worked as a gameplay mechanic much better.
it's almost as if you were going to make grappling work in a game, it sucked, but the best way to do it is almost make grappling like turn-based.
Yeah.
Like an RPG. Striking, you can have that dynamically.
No, do you know what? That would make sense though, like kind of using both analogs at the same time. So like, that would be left hand, right hand, and then you're using like your right triggers as your left foot, right foot sort of thing.
There was a Pride game that had that.
Well, like turn-based grappling?
No, it wasn't turn-based, but like limb-based. Like the buttons would control the limbs on the feet when you were striking, but they would also... Pride Fighting Championships had a video game, and I'm sure it had some...
Because I feel like that would work. Like we are saying, like...
system with the grappling where, like...
I think more it's just... One, kickboxing and Muay Thai should be much bigger sports than they are. Well, obviously we've seen Muay Thai and that exploding with one championship.
Yeah.
But kickboxing video game would work a million times more than an MMA video game. Yeah, and there was like a few Japan-only PS2 kickboxing games and PS1 kickboxing games, like K1 World Grand Prix. I've got a game called Kickboxing Knockout for the PS1. It's alright, but it's like
imagine the graphics on that being so bad.
Like jamming soundtrack, like. But you really need to do like kickboxing games. To be honest.
Fair.
Like I was there, like Fight Night Champion was.
I was about to say that was probably my all-time favorite fighting game, but I was like big into boxing when I was a kid, so for me it was just that like being able to be like Lennox Lewis and stuff like that was just unreal.
It was just it was a.
But it was very like bob and weave movement, wasn't it?
Well, God Hand, what we mentioned earlier, like not realistic at all, and would get cancelled in today's environment because it was just an incredibly strange game in many ways. But the actual gameplay mechanics were unbelievably good, and it was the guy who did Resident Evil 4. So it had the exact same camera angle, like the fixed camera behind the shoulders, but the right analog stick would be dodging. So like if people were throwing punches at you,
you could kind of see
could like
it.
slip in front of them, and then like if it was a low attack or whatever, you have to like get out of the way. But it's like
I think I'd much prefer that rather than like a side-on view, and then occasionally kind of panning in when you're kind of impacting. I'm talking about UFC here, but like that would be much better, like an over-the-pan shoulder shot where you kind of like.
You had that on Fighting Champion.
Yeah.
You had all kinds of cameras.
That's what I used to love because he used to be able to do like the whole like just dipping constantly.
Punch out, isn't it?
Yeah. I love that little video. Have you seen it where they just got like I think it's like Muhammad Ali and somebody else, and they just like put like a daft little tune on. It's like and they're just both dancing around instead. Mate, I will find it and send you it because it's fucking amazing. It's from like old school Fight Night Champions. That's it for computer games, really. But got some more random questions if you want.
Before we completely leave the topic of computer games, Devil May Cry 5 entering to Devil Trigger was a very happy memory in my life. That is all.
To be fair, I was going to ask what your favourite games were because I remember I've seen you mention quite a few times about Devil May Cry. It was kind of like out of my era a little bit. Like I remember 1 and 2 coming out, but I was very much like you're either like Tekken or like Devil May. Do you know what I mean? It's like you kind of got stuck. I never really played it that much to kind of find out what it was. It's the same with like Dragon Age and a few other games like I never really got into.
Yeah.
Like Final Fantasy I never got into because I ended up going to like Xbox instead of like PlayStation at the time, like as I got a bit older.
See, I vividly remember, because we were a bit too dumb at the age we were at to actually complete any Resident Evils or play them, but we watched our older brother James play them a lot. And then with Code Veronica, there was a demo disc for the first Devil May Cry. And we watched it, we're like, this is mind-blowing. And then the first Devil May Cry was literally mind-blowing, and then the second one was so bad. Like
was it?
Oh, like
that's probably why I think that was the first one I got introduced to. Yeah. So I probably played it and been like,
it is one of the worst video games ever. And there's like a lot of weird stories about why that happened. But then Devil May Cry 3 was brilliant, and then 4 was like it's gone through like a weird history, but Devil May Cry 5 was one, really, really good, and two, I'm not sure if this is part of why we like it so much, but there are two brothers in it who fight a lot.
Class. So it's just kind of like a slight maybe little
Yeah,
relation in the back of your head.
That,
What's your favourite TV shows? You just watch like a lot of animations, watch any mangas, watch anything like that? Anything you're watching at the moment that you just like proper like or like the
probably classic SpongeBob.
classic SpongeBob. Oh geez, SpongeBob.
Yeah. When I get deep into fight camp and I'm a bit tired, and this is YouTube that just uploads these old cooking shows. It's called KQED, and it uploads old cooking shows. One, Jack Pepin, who's this French-American chef.
Don't think about him.
Who just cook omelets and what have you. And then there's Yan Can Cook, who's this Chinese guy called Martin Yan. He'd be like, if Yan can cook, so can you. And he just shred this bit of Chinese celery or something like done. You just have this TV audience clapping.
Is that not like a little bit like torture though when you're in camp and stuff and you just sat there watching food videos? Well, I think I've asked you this before, haven't I?
It's almost like you're visualizing eating. And there are some studies that show, before you eat a meal, if you visualize eating your last meal or another meal, you'll actually consume fewer calories. It kind of tricks you.
Like it's obviously like releasing a hormone, isn't it, to say that you've like eaten enough or whatever, so it doesn't need to like absorb as much.
All the bodybuilders.
I find mukbangs crazy. It's funny here actually because I was going to ask like, is there anything you like to do outside of like the gym? Do you know what I mean? Obviously we just talk about computer games, and then you've just said there like watching fucking YouTube videos about people cooking. Because I've got like cooking, traveling, hobbies, stuff like that.
It's like. The gym and MMA is my life, but it's not the only thing I enjoy. Like I actually do enjoy cooking. I enjoy watching cooking stuff. I enjoy being out and about.
Like going for walks around little English towns and Saltburn and what have you. I have started. It's called George Hardwick DLC on TikTok, where I'm doing some food reviews. I started this about a week ago because I wanted. It was something I was thinking about when I had my jaw injury and I was in hospital for days on end. Not
imagining all the food you could eat.
I was like, I kind of want to do some food reviews when my jaw's healthy. But I'm not going to just post it on my MMA themed account.
Yeah, you want to like separate account for it.
So I've about a week and a bit ago started posting reviews, and it's more like. Some proper stuff, some just daft stuff. I saw a whole roast chicken in Heron and it was £2.14. Jesus. I'm like, well, let's review it then. I just propped the camera in the car and I just got a family-sized kitchen roll and covered me lap. Well, let's review this chicken.
Have you seen those videos where they're like, I went to a one-star restaurant, I went to a one-star bar, they're like those types of, that's like that type of thing, isn't it? Where like, I bought a £2 full chicken from Heron. This could go one of two ways here. And it's probably going to go the wrong way.
You got your Costco roast chicken tomorrow.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, because he's going to go to Northeast Jiu-Jitsu after strength and conditioning. Well, like at the moment, I'm not rolling and stuff, so I'm getting a little Costco trip in. And then when I mentioned that to George, he was like, "You know what? You need to get me." I'm like, "What, Costco pizza or a hot dog?" No. Like what? Whole rotisserie chicken.
I thought maybe it's just a new appreciation now that I can chew again, eating stuff off the bone.
Oh yeah, like carcass food is not like. Yeah, like when I was in Italy.
Hashtag food review. Hashtag carcass food.
Yeah, when I was in Italy, I had lobster ingredient. Like lobster is.
I get it.
It's a high level carcass food.
There's something about the effort of pulling it out of a shell or taking it off the bone that makes it more rewarding. I think that's what it is. I think it triggers that thing in like our genome to be like, this is how we used to eat. Do you know what I mean? It's primal. It's like cool. This is how we're supposed to eat, and we can appreciate it more.
You got to play the mini game before you eat it.
Yeah. I kind of feel like it regulates your eating speed a bit. So it spreads it. Because I'm terrible for not chewing. It's, they said no solid foods. There was like 6 weeks where post-surgery I couldn't chew. They said don't chew, you can re-injure the jaw. And like no solid foods. And then I just got to a point where if it's wet enough, I don't chew it anyway. So I was having chips and gravy. I had a full roast dinner if I get enough horseradish and gravy on it.
That's mad. That. Close. I'll tie it off a little bit because obviously we've done over an hour. But it was a podcast called Customer Service, and like one of the things that I was like about. I did all this weekend.
You need.
One of the points that I originally started it was just like to kind of get like mad stories from like places people worked at about like any sort of things that had happened and stuff like that. Obviously, we used being like live events. What's the craziest shit you've seen at a live event?
I think we thought about the same guy the moment you asked us.
You both looked at each other like,
So like,
you don't have to divulge names or you don't have to see.
oh well, no,
I don't even know his name.
we
We called him the Battle Onion.
Yeah, so obviously gyms do, especially MMA gyms, do attract unusual people from time to time. But I think this fella might take the cake for the weirdest guy. So like, he came up the stairs, and do you remember that episode of Friends where Joey wears all of Chandler's clothes?
Yeah, and he's just.
Yeah, he was wearing that. Pretty much. Yeah, and then like, this was when the Muay Thai class was after the wrestling class, and he came in at the start of the wrestling class. And like, what?
He was just taking all his clothes down, spraying a bit of deodorant, putting them all back, deciding he needed more deodorant, taking them on, spraying a bit of deodorant.
Yeah, and
Even though he had like 20 layers on.
that was when Spice was, because he was telling us that no, we forgot a big part of this story. He came in on the Tuesday before, and so like,
Well,
he came
let's just get to the minute. We don't have to speak about every.
no, but
every
this
side.
bit's fucking good. Because he came in and he was trying to tell Abdul, like, oh, I want to be a
Hold
world
on,
champion.
guys. Why is this not gone off?
Yeah. So, back to the story of Battle Onion. So there's a Tuesday class where he comes in and he starts talking to Abdul about like, oh, I'm self-taught and I want to be a world champion. And then Abdul asked how old he was and he said 49. And then as Abdul was going, well, obviously you can't be fucking world champion 49. Like, Gypsy Anth just immediately stopped Abdul and went, no, let him speak. And kind of took him under his wing and was like getting him to keep telling him stuff. And Anth was like, well, go on, show us one of your best kicks on the bag. So he was in he was kind of dressed like how you dressed at the start of GTA San Andreas, but his armpit hair was like coming out here. And Pete was just demonstrating some technique on me, and he just sort of like walked through the class to the bag, did some bizarre spinning kick, and then walked back with like full confidence that what he'd just done was cool. And we were all just kind of struggling to cope with that. Anyway, he comes in on the Thursday, the wrestling class is going on, he's like, nah, he's more interested in Muay Thai. Muay Thai. And he keeps just taking layers of clothing off, and spraying a bit of deodorant on, putting them on, taking layers of clothing off. And then, for whatever reason, Spice, someone who used to fight at the gym, was just like, so many layers of clothes, so many layers of battle knowledge, like a battle onion. And then that's how the name stuck. And then at one point, didn't you clock he was eating a fucking tin of tuna in the corner?
Oh yeah.
Like,
But Harry's teaching the technique. It's some clinch technique. You turn the head and you knee the body, or something along these lines. He showed the technique about 5 minutes of demonstration, and then he asked, does anyone have any questions about the technique? And the Battle Onion pipes up. So you know Muay Thai, is that Chinese or Japanese? And we're just looking around. It's from Thailand. It's Muay Thai. And he's like, I was an idiot there, wasn't I?
and then he like at the end on the timetable, it was like, what's BJJ? And George was like, that's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's from Brazil. But at the end of the session, he like took his shirt off and was kind of like tensing in the mirror. And again, his armpit hair, like I cannot stress enough, was like probably like longer than this quiff. But then he gets a kind of deodorant. And bear in mind, once you finish training, you should get a shower before you put deodorant on. Like,
all that's doing is if you start spraying deodorant on while you're sweating, you're just creating a barrier that you're going to have to clean off before you can actually get to the funnel. But he looks at himself in the mirror, sprays about half the can of deodorant on his front, then like half around his back, then opens his shorts up and sprays about half a can of deodorant down the front and then half down the back. And we're like, what the fuck? And then he gives us this massive speech.
Yeah, he's like this close to me. He's like giving me this speech. He's like, I'm 49. I want to be a world champion, kickboxing when I'm 50. So what I'll do is I'll give everything in my body, in my soul, in my power. I just want you to mold me like a sponge. Whatever that means.
I'll be the one thing that goes back to its normal form.
So mold me and I will become a champion. You just tell me the right things to do and I'll do everything. Never see him at a classic anyhow like that.
Yeah, like leaves. We were all just thinking, well, that was incredibly fucking strange. You know, like you get strange people in the gym, but that was like particularly odd. And as we were leaving, we were like, what the fuck? Then like I'm starting to think like I'm tripping because I look left when I leave the gym, and I see on I think it was like a stop sign or like on a lamppost, a bike on its side tied up like
Upwards.
Like suspended in the air.
suspended up a fucking lamppost with like a good couple of feet clearance from the ground. I was like, what the fuck? I think I am just tripping. Maybe I'm just
It's
made
just
all
like
shit
walked
up.
into a dream here.
And then I look, it's fucking battling you, unchaining his bike from.
But he's like got full arm's length, like
I'm trying to get it down. How do you get it up?
I was just like, what the?
To be fair, the amount of people that nick bikes in Borough, that's not a bad tech, is that, you know, like get it up and then just jam it up so high up, because then people have to see you taking it, do you know what I mean? Like, I've seen people outside the shop, I'm not even kidding you, someone's came to the shop, put a lock on the thing, walked into the shop, by the time they've got to me, they've turned around and some guys like came over with another bike, got off that one, clipped it with some bolt cutters, left this shitty bike on the floor, and then got this brand new bike and rode away within, I'm talking 30 seconds. Like, I've watched that happen and just been like, someone stole your bike, mate. Jesus. And they've literally just walked in, they're like, nah, don't have to.
But
No, someone stole your bike.
But I think if it was tied, 2.5 meters
Above the
up a
ground.
lamppost, I think any potential thieves would just, through a sheer state of confusion. And
What the fuck?
Yeah, he was. Well, then Gypsy Ant saw him again on Linthorpe Road and was like, "Oh, it shows you your best move." So he started kicking a lamppost.
And then he was like, oh, they were laughing at me because I asked if Muay Thai is from China or Japan. And then it's actually from Taiwan.
Still didn't even get it right.
Oh, yeah. Like, he is quite, like, you get many strange people through the doors of an MMA gym. And then a lot of the people actually end up sticking out and being fighters are very strange people, so.
I remember one of my first experiences in like a fight gym. It was so like mismatched. Like I didn't have like any sort of like prior knowledge to like BJJ or anything like that. It was all just like stand up stuff. Do you know what I mean? And then my mate was like, "Come down to this gym. Like we're going to learn some stuff." So I thought it was like, "Oh sweet, we're going down and learn some BJJ. Do you know what I mean? Do some rolls like all this." No, it was like I walked in and then I was used as like fodder. Do you know what I mean? It's like to get beaten the shit out of by some guy who was like just training, because I was like the only tall, long, rangy person there. So they were like, "He'll do." And they didn't even like ask me my background or anything. They're like, "I'll just pair up with that lad." And then the next one, they're like, "Right, cool. So we're gonna do sprawls. So you're gonna stand there and you're basically just gonna like parry the jab, and then someone's gonna try and like dip underneath you and go for the double leg takedown." I had some dude that was about 22 stone and taller than me. Do you know what I mean? Just jabbing me fucking head off as I'm trying to go for like a double leg takedown that I've never done before in my life. I'm just trying to move this immovable force. Do you know what I mean? Just going.
What gym was this?
It was in Reckington, mate. Like I said, it was some weird little like. I think it was like an old school boxing gym, and they tried to sort of convert it into a bit of BJJ. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's there anymore at all. But like. Yeah, it was just the worst thing I'd walked into. They were just like, "Yeah, with him." And I just remember looking, this guy's head was like bigger than a bull, do you know what I mean? I was just like, "Oh, fucking hell." And then I remember going into like, "Oh, you're going to do some rolling, so you're going to start off and basically he's going to be on your back and you're going to have to just try and get out of a rear naked." And you're just like, I don't even know what that is, mate. Like, I've watched the sport, but I don't know how to get out of this when I've got a guy whose arms are like twice as big as my head crushing my neck. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we don't, just for anyone who wants to come to MFA, we don't do that shit here.
No, it's definitely not. It's definitely dynamic.
You're gonna have to spend a lot of time in bad positions, but
you're gonna learn.
and then you'll get an equal amount of time in the good position as well.
Class, well, really appreciate this, guys. The last thing I kind of do is just kind of like, there's basically called customer satisfaction I normally have, but instead it'll just be like anything that you kind of want to like highlight, like in terms of like coaches, training partners, like anybody really that you just like want to give a shout out to.
Go first.
Gyms to train at Middlesbrough Fight Academy, Newcastle Fight Centre, U29 Fitness in Washington. These are gyms we train at.
Yeah, so like massive shout out to Abdul Mohammed, the OG, the guy who gave people who wanted to do MMA in Middlesbrough a platform and a place to actually train out of, and then just so happened to actually show some fucking world class shit. Building a really good team here. So big shout out to Abdul Mohammed. Massive shout out to Peter Irving, jiu-jitsu coach. He's more than that at this point. Like, just huge, good, influential figure in our lives. Unit 29, Andy, just a lot of our training partners. Big shout out to Joe Fields for that last fight camp, because obviously where Leon was away and George was injured, Joe Fields stepped up in a lot of ways for me, and obviously vice versa, like I was helping him get ready for his. But yeah, and then big shout out to the sponsors. We've got JMA, Lewis McCarthy, got Manjaro's, got Passive Fire Containment, Fight Stop Pro, and then also Off the Ground coffee shop.
I need stamps on them, don't I?
Best lattes, best bagels, best Nutella stuffed cookies you're ever going to get.
Legend. Right. Thanks very much, guys. We appreciate that.